The morning sunlight spilled across my office floor, slicing through the glass walls like golden ribbons. I leaned back in my leather chair, silk blouse smoothing cool against my skin, the faint hum of the city vibrating below. From 30 floors up, Manhattan always looked like another world. Fast, hungry, endless. My phone buzzed against the mahogany desk, the vibration steady, insistent. I reached for it absent-mindedly, expecting another client update, maybe an investor follow-up. But the name glowing on the screen froze me. Henderson and Company. The same firm that once looked me dead in the eye and said I wasn't good enough. The same office where I'd walked out, cheeks burning, clutching a resume they hadn't even glanced at twice. Now they were calling me. A sharp laugh escaped before I could stop it. It echoed too loudly in the polished quiet of my office. How ironic. Years ago, I had begged for a chance to prove myself to them. Today, it was them, reaching out, practically knocking on my door. I set the phone down, letting it buzz, watching the name flash again, and again like some kind of apology wrapped in desperation. My fingers brushed against the edge of the crystal penholder on my desk, grounding me in the present. I could answer. I could let the past and present collide in a single conversation. But part of me wanted them to wait, to feel the sting of silence the way I once did. And in that silence, the memories came rushing back. I still remember that day as if it were burned into the walls of my memory. It was 3 years ago, a rainy Wednesday in New York. My umbrella had flipped inside out halfway down Lexington Avenue, and by the time I reached the glass doors of Henderson and Company, my shoes were soaked through. I tried to shake off the water, smooth my hair, and steady my hands, but nothing could calm the knot twisting in my stomach. This wasn't just an interview for me. It was hope. It was stability, a salary that could cover rent without juggling 3 side jobs. It was validation after months of hearing, "We'll keep your resume on file." Inside, the lobby smelled of polished marble and strong cologne. I sat across from men in tailored suits and women in sleek pencil skirts. My navy dress suddenly felt like a thrift store bargain, even though I'd ironed it 3 times the night before. When they finally called me in, 3 executives sat behind a long table. I handed them my resume with a smile I prayed looked confident. They glanced at it briefly, exchanged looks, then one of them, Mr. Jacobs, I'll never forget his tone, leaned back and said, "Honestly, we don't think you'd be a good fit here. You seem ambitious. Maybe too ambitious for this role." Too ambitious? My throat tightened, but I forced myself to ask, "What do you mean?" He shrugged, dismissive. "We need someone who'll stay in their lane. You strike me as someone who might outgrow this position too quickly." It was rejection, cloaked as a backhanded compliment. I felt the sting behind my eyes, the shake in my hands under the table. But I smiled anyway, gathering my resume as though it wasn't the flimsiest shield in the world. As I stood to leave, I remembered the bracelet on my wrist, a simple silver chain my grandmother had given me before she passed. "Whenever you feel small," she had whispered, "remember that diamonds start as coal. Pressure is proof you're becoming something strong." I touched the bracelet, pressing it into my skin like a promise. Outside, the rain was falling harder, plastering my hair against my cheeks. But in that moment, beneath the sting of rejection, a spark flickered. If they thought I was too ambitious, maybe that wasn't a flaw. Maybe it was my power. I walked away, drenched and trembling, but carrying something far stronger than disappointment, a vow. They hadn't just refused me a job. They had lit the fire that would make me unstoppable. After that rejection, I gave myself one night to cry. Just one. I remember curling up on my tiny futon in my Queens apartment, rain still dripping from the window frame, mascara smudging the pillow. My savings account was nearly empty, and every doubt I had ever buried clawed its way to the surface. Maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't enough. But then I caught sight of that silver bracelet on my wrist, glinting faintly under the lamplight. My grandmother's words echoed back, "Pressure is proof you're becoming something strong." And I decided no one would ever make me beg again. The next morning, I opened my laptop and began searching. Not for jobs. for opportunities. I signed up for online courses in business analytics, digital marketing, and coding. Nights bled into mornings as I studied, practiced, and built small freelance projects. My kitchen table turned into my desk, cluttered with coffee mugs, sticky notes, and notebooks filled with scribbles of strategy ideas. At first, it was lonely. My friends posted photos of after-work happy hours and weekend trips, while I sat hunched over my screen, surviving on ramen noodles and determination. But then came my first client, a small bakery in Brooklyn that needed a website. I charged almost nothing, just enough to cover groceries, but when the owner hugged me after seeing her new online shop, I felt something Henderson and Company could never have given me: freedom. One client became 2, then 5, then 10. Word spread. My work was good, and more importantly, I cared. I wasn't just delivering services, I was helping people build dreams. Still, self-doubt haunted me. There were nights I stared at invoices that hadn't been paid, mornings when I wondered if I should just give up and crawl back into the traditional job hunt. But every time, I remembered that rainy day, the smirk on Mr. Jacobs's face, the way they had dismissed me without even giving me a chance. That memory became my fuel. Then everything shifted when I met her. Claudia Ramirez, a powerhouse in the tech industry, founder of a startup that was suddenly making headlines. She had seen one of my digital campaigns for a small eco-friendly brand and sent me a simple email. "Lunch? I like your work." I almost thought it was spam, but it wasn't. Over salads in a crowded cafe, Claudia looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're talented, but you're playing too small. Stop hiding in the shadows. Build your own company." Her belief in me cracked something open. For the first time, I allowed myself to dream bigger than rent money and grocery bills. Within a year, I had registered my own firm, Lena Gray Consulting. At first it was just me, then a small team, then more than I could have imagined. I kept my success quiet. My social media remained modest. Photos of coffee mugs, city sunsets, the occasional book recommendation. No bragging, no announcements. I wanted to build in silence, away from the eyes that once judged me. And so, while Henderson and Company thought I had disappeared, I was quietly constructing an empire. Brick by brick. Client by client. Late night after late night. Until one day, I looked up from my desk in a sleek Manhattan office with my name etched on the door and realized I had built the life they never believed I could have. The message from Henderson and Company didn't stop at one call. It turned into an email. Then another. Then a meeting request sent by one of their partners. Finally, curiosity won. I told my assistant, Claire, to schedule them in for Thursday afternoon. I wanted to see their faces. That day, my office gleamed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, sunlight bouncing off the glass towers. My desk was polished, awards lined the shelves, and a painting by a local female artist hung proudly on the wall. Everything in the space told a story. Not just of wealth, but of the battles I had fought to earn it. I heard the click of heels and shuffle of expensive shoes in the hallway before Claire opened the door. "Your 2 o'clock is here," she said, her lips twitching with a knowing smile. In walked Mr. Jacobs and 2 other Henderson executives. The same men who had once tossed my resume aside as though my dreams were nothing more than paper. They looked around, trying to mask their surprise, but their widened eyes betrayed them. Mr. Jacobs's gaze lingered on the crystal chandelier, the leather chairs, the discreet plaque on the wall. Lena Gray Consulting, founder and CEO. "Miss Gray," he began, voice smoother than I remembered. "It's been a while." "Yes," I said, leaning back in my chair, my fingertips resting lightly on my grandmother's bracelet. "It has." They exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable. I let the silence stretch, the soft hum of the city below filling the space. Finally, one of them cleared his throat. "We were hoping to discuss a potential partnership. Henderson and Company has been facing challenges. Client retention, market competition. We've heard your firm has been thriving." Thriving. That word curled through me like velvet. Once, they wouldn't give me 5 minutes of their time. Now they were here, practically begging. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. That's interesting. Last I remember, you didn't think I was a good fit. Mr. Jacobs's jaw tightened. Business changes. We've all had to adapt. I let my eyes wander deliberately over the office they were standing in, then back to their faces. Yes, business does change. Some of us adapt. Some of us get left behind. The flush that crept up his neck was more satisfying than I'd like to admit. Lena, he tried again, dropping the formality this time, as though softening his tone would erase the past. We'd like to bring your firm on board as a partner. We could use your expertise, your reach. Henderson and Company values leaders like you. Leaders like me. The irony almost made me laugh. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the desk. My voice was calm, measured, almost gentle. Do you know what I remember most about that interview 3 years ago? They shifted uncomfortably. None of them answered. I remember walking into your office, soaking wet, clutching my resume like it was the only thing keeping me alive. And I remember you telling me I was too ambitious. I smiled faintly. Turns out you were right. My ambition built this. I gestured around the office. And now, you're sitting here asking me for help. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Mr. Jacobs's lips pressed into a thin line. Another executive coughed into his fist, avoiding my gaze. For a moment, I let them sit in it. Let them feel the weight of their own dismissal. Then, softly but firmly, I added, "So tell me, why should I say yes?" Their faces flickered with something I had never seen before, humility, maybe even fear. And in that moment, I realized the power had shifted. Entirely. I let their silence linger a little longer, watching the discomfort settle in their shoulders. Then I leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, the sharp click of my heel against the desk's edge breaking the tension. "You want me to partner with you?" I said slowly. "But let's be clear, you're not in the position to dictate terms. If we're going to work together, it will be on my conditions." Mr. Jacobs opened his mouth to object, but I raised a hand, cutting him off. "No, you've spoken enough. Now you'll listen." The firmness in my own voice surprised even me. Not anger, not cruelty, just the kind of calm authority born from surviving storms alone. "First," I continued, "humility. That arrogant culture you built at Henderson and Company? It doesn't work anymore. If anyone on your team so much as belittles a junior employee, the partnership ends immediately. No second chances." They exchanged uneasy glances, but I pressed on. "Second, equality. I will personally review your hiring practices. Women, people of color, people you've historically overlooked, they deserve a fair shot. If you want my firm's expertise, you'll create an environment where talent is valued over old boys' club politics." The youngest executive shifted in his seat, cheeks coloring. I could tell the words hit their mark. "Third," I said, my fingers grazing the silver bracelet on my wrist, "you will acknowledge the truth. Publicly. In every press release, every joint statement, you'll make it clear that Lena Gray Consulting isn't your junior partner. We are equals. No, more than equals. You came to me. That narrative matters." Mr. Jacobs stiffened, but he didn't argue. Perhaps he saw the steel in my eyes. I softened my tone slightly, but not my resolve. "Finally, each of you will do something uncomfortable. Mentor someone who reminds you of the person you once dismissed. Someone ambitious, hungry, underestimated. Because the world doesn't need more gatekeepers, it needs more doors opened." The room was heavy with silence when I finished. I could see the resistance flicker in their eyes, but underneath it, there was something else. Recognition. Maybe even shame. "Those are my conditions," I said simply. "Take them, or walk out that door, and figure out your collapse on your own." For a long moment, no one spoke. The city hummed outside, car horns drifting faintly through the glass. Finally, Mr. Jacobs's voice broke the quiet. "We'll agree," he said, his tone low, reluctant but steady. I studied him. The same man who had once dismissed me without hesitation now sat in front of me, conceding to terms set by the woman he'd underestimated. The irony was poetic. Good, I replied. Then we can begin. They nodded, standing to leave, each one noticeably subdued. Their power had evaporated the moment they stepped into my office. As the door closed behind them, I exhaled slowly. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't payback. It was balance. For once, the scales were finally even, and I was the one holding them. In the weeks that followed, I watched the shift unfold like a slow sunrise. Henderson and Company began reshaping its culture, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And in the process, I noticed something almost startling. They were learning. The first press release went out with my name listed not as collaborator or advisor, but as partner. My firm's logo sat proudly beside theirs, and every major outlet picked up the story. The once dismissed job applicant now leading the very company that had rejected her. I saw Mr. Jacobs speak at a conference months later. For the first time, his tone wasn't polished arrogance. It was humble, measured. He talked about mistakes, about blind spots, about the necessity of change. I doubted he would ever admit it to me, but I knew. My conditions had forced him to confront his own pride. As for me, I had grown into a woman I never could have imagined back on that rainy Wednesday. The sleepless nights, the quiet sacrifices, the whispered encouragement of my grandmother's voice, they had all brought me here. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I sat by the window of my office, the city glowing beneath me. I turned the silver bracelet gently around my wrist, feeling the cool metal press against my skin. For years, it had been a reminder of the girl who once felt small, invisible. Now, it was proof of the woman I had become. I thought back to the moment outside Henderson and Company, rain drenching my hair, rejection burning in my chest. That girl had walked away trembling, but she had also walked away unbroken. She had carried ambition like a secret flame until it became a fire no one could ignore. And now, the same people who once closed doors in her face came knocking, asking to be let in. I smiled to myself, lifting my coffee mug in a quiet toast to the city lights. Not out of spite, not even triumph, but gratitude for the pressure, the pain, the persistence that shaped me. Because in the end, it wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. I leaned back, letting the hum of Manhattan lull me into calm. My voice, steady, strong, almost tender, echoed in my thoughts, the words I knew would stay with me forever. They once refused my job offer, but now they beg for work. That's not revenge. That's becoming the woman no one saw coming.